Introduction. Welcome back to our Python learning series. In this episode, we are moving into one of the most important concepts in programming, loops. Loops allow us to repeat actions in Python automatically. Instead of writing the same line of code many times, we can write it once and let Python repeat it for us. This makes our programs shorter, smarter, and much easier to maintain. In our everyday life, we repeat actions all the time. We take multiple steps while walking. We count things one by one. We read chapters page by page. We check attendance name after name. We repeat exercises multiple times. Python also needs a way to repeat tasks, and loops are how Python handles repetition. By the end of this episode, you will understand what loops are, why they are needed, how they work, the difference between for and while loops, how the flow inside a loop moves, why indentation matters, real examples, patterns, and important points to remember. Let's begin. All right, so let's talk about loops. Loops are basically instructions that tell Python to repeat something again and again until a certain point. And you know what? This is something we actually do all the time in real life. Like, imagine someone tells you, say hello 10 times. You won't write the word hello 10 times on a notebook. You'll simply repeat it 10 times. Because repeating something is easier than writing it again and again. Or think about exercising. If someone says, do 20 jumping jacks, you don't invent a new movement every time. You repeat the same movement 20 times. Or when you're checking attendance in school or college, you call each name one after another again and again until the list is finished. Or imagine counting money. You pick each note one by one until the entire bundle is done. See? Repetition is everywhere. And here's the interesting part. Python also needs a way to repeat actions because computers handle huge amounts of data and repeating tasks manually would be impossible. So we can understand loops like this. Start somewhere, repeat an action, follow a rule, and stop when the rule says to stop. Although the idea sounds simple, it's extremely powerful. A loop basically has four things: a starting point, a rule or condition, a repeated action, and a stopping point. And if you look around, loops exist in almost every digital thing you use. When your phone loads Instagram posts, it loops through each post behind the scenes. When YouTube loads comments, it loops through thousands of them. When a file is read by a program, it goes line by line, again and again. When a game runs animation frames, it loops through them repeatedly. Even notifications on your phone appear because a loop keeps checking. Do I need to show something now? So simply put, without loops, we would be writing hundreds of lines manually. But with loops, we write one small block of code and Python repeats it as many times as we want. Loops make our programs shorter, smarter, and way more efficient. That's all loops are, a clean and automatic way to repeat tasks without doing the hard work yourself. So now that we understand what loops are, let's talk about the types of loops Python gives us. And you know what? It's actually very simple. Python mainly gives us two loops, the for loop and the while loop. Let's start with the for loop because honestly, we use it a lot. 1. For loop, A for loop, is used when we already know how many times we want something to repeat. Like, think about this. If I tell you to clap your hands 5 times, you already know the number 5. You'll clap exactly 5 times, not more, not less. So here we can understand the for loop like this. Repeat this action again and again for a fixed number of times. For example, if you want to print numbers from 1 to 10, you know that the loop has to run exactly 10 times. If you have a list of items like milk, bread, eggs, and you want to check them one by one, you already know the list has 3 items, so the loop will run exactly 3 times. That's why the for loop is perfect when the count is already clear. Factor 2. While loop. Now let's talk about the while loop, which works a little differently. A while loop is used when you don't know how many times something needs to repeat. It just keeps repeating as long as a condition is true. Let's take a real-life example. Imagine you're trying to unlock your phone with a password. You keep entering the password again, and again, while the phone says it's incorrect. You don't know if you'll get it right in 1 try or 5 tries. The repetition depends on a condition, not a fixed number. Another example, Let's say you are filling a water bottle. You keep pouring water while the bottle is not full. You don't pour 10 times, you pour until it's full. So the repetition depends on a condition. We can understand the while loop like this. Here, we can understand the while loop like this. Repeat this action again and again while the condition stays true. Stop only when the condition becomes false. Why Python has both loops? Because real-world tasks are different. Sometimes we know how many times we are repeating, like counting, printing numbers, checking items in a list, and sometimes we don't know, like entering a password, waiting for a file to download, letting a timer run until 0. So Python gives us both for and while loops because both types of repetition exist in the real world. The for loop feels like following a set of instructions with a clear number. The while loop feels like following a rule until something changes. That's the basic idea behind the types of loops. So now that we know what loops are and the types of loops Python gives us, the next question is, why do we even need loops? And the answer is actually very simple. We use loops because repeating things manually is boring, slow, and honestly, not practical at all. Like, imagine you want to print numbers from 1 to 100. You're not going to sit and write 100 print statements. That would take forever and look terrible in your code. Or let's say you have a list of 500 students in a class database, and you want to check each student's marks one by one. You can't write code 500 times. You need one loop that just goes through the list automatically. That's the power of loops. Loops help us. 1. Avoid writing repetitive code. Why write something 20 times when you can just repeat it with one loop? 2. Reduce mistakes. If you manually repeat code, you might forget something or type something wrong. A loop never forgets, never gets tired, and never makes a typing mistake. 3. Work with large amounts of data. Think about a YouTube channel with thousands of comments. You can't check comments manually in code. A loop can scan through every comment easily. 4. Automate tasks. Loops allow tasks to run automatically without human involvement, like checking notifications, loading new messages, scanning files, or processing images. 5. Make logic simple and clean. Instead of writing long code, loops allow us to write small, clean, beautiful code that does big things. And you know what? Loops aren't just helpful, they're everywhere. When Instagram loads your feed, it loops through posts. When Amazon shows product recommendations, it loops through items. When you send a message, the app loops through your chat history to display everything. When a game runs animations, it loops through frames again and again. Even when your phone checks for new notifications, there's a loop running quietly in the background. So we can understand loops like this. Whenever something has to happen more than once, whenever a task needs repetition, whenever a list or sequence needs to be processed, a loop is the perfect tool. Without loops, programming would be extremely difficult. With loops, Python becomes smart enough to repeat tasks quickly and correctly. That's why loops are one of the most important foundations in programming. Now let's understand how is the flow of loops. Because once you understand the step-by-step flow, loops will feel very simple and predictable. Every loop, whether it is a for loop or a while loop, it moves through the same stages. The flow goes like this. Firstly, start of loop, then checking for the condition, later on executing body, and in the end, exit of loop based on the condition. Let's understand this properly for both the loop types. Firstly, we will see the flow for the for loop. A for loop flows in a very structured and predictable way. We can explain it like this. In the first step, it starts from a starting point, or the first value in the sequence. The second step, then, check the range or list to confirm the value exists. On the basis of this condition, it decides to go to the body or to stop or exit the loop. Third step says if the condition is true, then run the loop body using that value. In the fourth step, move to the next value, like the update happens automatically. Fifth step checks the condition again, whether a next value exists. And in the last step, if the condition is true, repeat the body again, and if the condition is false, the loop stops. Okay, let's take a simple example to print numbers from 1 to 5. For doing that, let's write a for loop in VS Code, right like this, for I in range 1, 6. And inside the body of for loop, we will print the I, print I here. The I represent the local variable which stores an integer value. Here's how the flow of this program works. In the step 1, Python starts with I equals 1. In the step 2, it checks if 1 is within the range of 1 to 5 here. I am saying 5 because Python loops excludes the last condition. Like if we mention 5 over here, it will go till 4. So to go to TE5, we write 6. Okay, so in step 3, it runs the loop body and prints the value of variable I. So at this time, the value is 1, so it will print 1. In step 4, the loop moves to the next number, I equal to 2, like updation of the value. In step 5, it will checks if 2 is within the range. In step 6, it will print 2, and this continues for the value 3, 4, and 5. Finally, when the next number becomes 6, Python checks the range and sees there is no 6, and the condition becomes false, so the loop stops there itself. So this is how the for loop actually works. Let's run this code and check the output. So here you can see it displays 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 as expected. Before moving to while loop, there are certain things which you should know about for loop, which are you can add steps. If you want the count to increase by 2 of 1, you can mention that in this way. In this way, like in the first is initialization, second one is condition, and the third part is step here. If you write 2, then the step increment be, like firstly, it will be 1. For the second step, it will be 1 plus step, which is 2, so it'll be 3. Then same for the next, 3 plus 2 equal 5, and it goes till the condition becomes false. The same way you can do it negative as well, like -1, -2, -3. Just make sure you have correct logic with respect to your problem statement for which you are using the loop. So it will help you with your solution. This is the simple for loop. By using loops, we can work with lists, set, and other data types as well, but we will explore that in our coming videos. Now let's understand the flow of an while loop. While loop flows slightly differently because here the number of repetitions is not fixed. A while loop is controlled by a condition, not by a list of values. So the flow of a while loop looks like this. Start with an initial value, check the condition. If the condition is true, run the loop body, update the value inside the loop, then again, check for the condition. If the condition is still true, repeat the previous step. If the condition becomes false, stop the loop and exit. Let's take the same example of printing 5 numbers but with while loop. The code for this will look like this. First, let's initialize and variable name number with the integer value 1, then the while keyword followed with the condition. The condition here is the number is less than equals to 5th, then colon, and inside the while loop, which is body includes print statement for printing numbers, and the value updating code here, we will increment the number with 1. Just like we use a step in for loop, here we use this updating code, which is number equals number plus 1. That's it. Here's how the flow works. Step 1, start with number equals 1. Step 2, Python checks the condition is number equal 5 or not, so it is yes. So in the step 3, it will runs the loop and prints 1. Then step 4 updates number to 2. Step 5 checks the condition again, is 2 so equal to 5 or not, so it is yes. So in the 6 prints 2, and this continues for 3, 4, and 5. When number becomes 6, Python checks the condition. This time it is false, so the loop stops. Now let's go through short comparison between for and while loop. The for loop moves through values that already exist, like numbers in a range or items in a list. The update happens automatically. The while loop repeats based on a condition. Here, you must update the value yourself, otherwise the loop may never stop. Both loops follow the same journey internally. Start, check the condition, repeat the steps, update the value, check again, stop, but their control mechanism is different. At example 1, printing numbers from 1 to 5 using a for loop. Let's start with a very simple example, printing the numbers 1 to 5 using a for loop. On the screen, I am writing a for loop that starts at 1 and goes up to 5, and inside the loop, I am printing the value of the loop variable. Now let me explain exactly what is happening in this program step by step. The first thing Python does is look at the range we provided. This range creates a sequence of numbers starting from 1 and ending at 5. So Python prepares these numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Now the loop begins, line by line execution. Step 1, Python takes the first number in the sequence, which is 1, and stores it in the loop variable. You can imagine Python holding the value 1 in its hand. Because 1 is a valid number in the sequence, Python enters the loop body. So on the screen, you will see the number 1 printed. Step 2, Python automatically moves to the next number in the sequence, which is 2. Again, it checks if 2 is inside the range. Since the answer is yes, Python prints 2 on the screen. Step 3. Python now moves to the next number, which is 3, checks it, and prints 3. Step 4. Python moves to 4, checks it, and prints 4. Step 5. Python moves to 5, checks it, and prints 5. After printing 5, Python tries to move to the next number, which would be 6. Now, Python checks the range and realizes that 6 does not exist in the sequence we created. So at that moment, the loop ends. What you will see on the screen, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, each on its own line. Why this works. The for loop automatically updates the variable and moves to the next number. We don't have to increase anything manually. Python handles the progression from 1 to the next value internally. Our job is only to write the loop structure and the action inside the loop. 2. Printing each character of a word. Now let's look at another example. I am writing a variable on the screen and storing the word Python inside it. Then I am writing a for loop that goes through each character in the word and prints it. Here's exactly what happens internally. Python looks at the word we provided. A word or a string is treated as a sequence of characters. So Python prepares the characters P, Y, T, H, O, and N one by one. So now step-by-step flow. Python begins by picking the first character, which is P, and prints it. Then Python moves to Y and prints it. Then T, then H, then O, and finally N. So on the screen you will see P, Y, T, H, O, N, each printed on a separate line. Why this works? Strings are iterable, which means Python can take each character one by one. For loops work perfectly with sequences like lists and strings. Hash example 3, looping through a shopping list. Now I am creating a list on the screen with items, milk, bread, and eggs. Then I am writing a for loop that goes through each item in that list. Let's understand what Python is doing behind the scenes. Python first looks at the list and sees that it contains 3 items, so Python prepares them in order: milk, bread, eggs. During the loop, Python first takes milk and prints it on the screen. Then Python takes bread and prints it. Then Python takes eggs and prints it. So your output will be milk, bread, eggs. This is how Python processes lists and loops through each element automatically. Hack example 4, printing numbers 1 to 5 using a while loop. Now let's do the same thing using a while loop. On the screen, I am creating a variable named number and storing the value 1 in it. Then I am writing a while loop that repeats as long as number is less than or equal to 5. Inside the loop, I am printing the current value and then increasing it by 1. Now let's break down the flow. Step 1. Python checks the condition. The value of number is 1 and 1 is allowed, so Python prints 1 on the screen. Then Python increases the value to 2. Step 2. Python checks the condition again. 2 is allowed, so Python prints 2, then updates the value to 3. Step 3. 3 is allowed, Python prints 3 and updates it to 4. Step 4. 4 is allowed, Python prints 4 and updates it to 5. Step 5. 5 is allowed, Python prints 5 and updates it to 6. Now the value becomes 6. Python checks the condition again, and this time it becomes false, so the loop stops immediately. This is how a while loop keeps repeating based on a condition. And that brings us to the end of this episode on loops in Python. Thank you so much for watching, for learning, and for staying.